Really quick and try to make this as fast as possible. Before we get started, just want to point out options are not for everyone, and we are a pretty much not exclusive. We focus on options. So you should read characteristics and risks of standards options before trading and get a copy of that by calling 1-888-OPTIONS. All right, so just doing this kind of short version of the weekly recap. Again, it's in the market outlook. There were two things last week that really just turned the markets around. One, Janet Yellen, she did go on TV and said, hey, inflation is going to be temporary. You can drill into that if you want, but that was the headline. And then also, I think it was Friday, same day as the non-farm payrolls, which were good. If you watch CNBC, the doctor there basically calls the end of the pandemic, and I think that had an equal impact on the market as the actual non-farm payrolls themselves. Getting a little bit more into it, OPEC, if you watch oil, this is going to be a pretty big thing to note this week. They are actually getting pressure from like the US, Japan, and a bunch of other countries to start pumping more crude, but they've been fighting. So we haven't seen a lot of rigs opening, but we get another Baker Hughes count today. This week we'll have some themes of inflation that you guys will see. It's gonna be a Wednesday week, right? Tuesday, Wednesday. So Monday pump, just like we're getting, carry into Tuesday, maybe a little down day Wednesday. We'll see, and we got a handful of earnings also later in the week. So ISM services. So that is a pretty huge gauge. Actually, ISM services, the 66.7% reading is actually the all-time high. That's a huge deal. And that has to do with the services sector, as in labor, right? What's the labor status? And this has been the sector that's been hit by far the most over the course of the pandemic. So to see this one hitting all-time highs and just a huge jump versus the expected number, that is a pretty big deal for the market. So we'll get some more numbers this week. We got manufacturing producer numbers last week, and so we'll get into some of the consumer numbers as well. Last thing, so we had Fed meetings, and generally the consensus was, yes, we're going to have a taper. It's going to start next November, or this month, mid-November, and then we'll read into the December. So this was the meeting that everybody was kind of worried about, what could take the market down. This was it. And essentially the taper is not, so the Fed right now is buying like 80 billion in treasuries, 40 billion mortgage-backed securities, and the taper was to change that to 70 billion from 80 in treasuries, and then 35 billion from 40 in mortgage-backed securities, and likely another cut in December. But really, there was a lot of focus on supply chain. So the supply chain situation, that's actually going to have a lot to do with everything. And I think I saw an article, it was like the Wall Street Journal was calling for actual rate hikes. So it's taper first and then rate hikes, which won't be, I think it was mid 2020. So we're still a ways away from that. And the market is absolutely pricing that in already. So I don't think it'll be a huge thing. Quick take. So this week, I got 1,100 companies reporting. The biggest one of the Dow 30 is Disney. Pretty much everybody's gone. The only one to miss was Boeing and Apple just to meet. Pretty much done with the biggest part of earnings season. And thankfully, now we should get a lot smaller moves, so that volatility we've been seeing in some of these earning trades should start to go away. At least that is the hope. I'm changing this economic calendar because we didn't have some of this stuff. This one actually we're going to get inflation expectations at 5.7. So this is the number. It's all about inflation this week. It's good to know. It's not a market mover by any means, but it's good to have an idea of what's to come. All right. So producer price index, right? So tomorrow, what else do we have? Do we have anything today? No, I think we have a couple Fed chiefs speaking also. And again, the only thing that the chiefs could say is if, inflation is all out of control, that would be market moving events for sure. So if you hear anything like that, just be aware. Tuesday, producer prices. This is not actually what the Fed uses as a benchmark. It's more of what the market uses as a benchmark to see what could be coming in the core CPI, which is what the Fed does look at. Remember, PPI is producer price index. Core is without food and energy. This is the main one. PPI here, tomorrow, I don't know, year over year is the big one. So 8.6. I mean, if this comes in like over 9 tomorrow, then the markets will probably have a heyday and might look pretty rough early in the morning. Anything below 8.4 is probably going to be good for the market. Just keep an eye on that. Wednesday is going to be our biggest day. So Wednesday here, we got mortgage rates, inflation rate. Here you go. right? So this is going to be a big one, and CPI, so core inflation rate there. And I guess this calendar probably calls it core inflation. So this calendar just calls it CPI straight up, or core inflation. But yeah, that's what it is. 4% is where we were. And remember, if we got depends on what this comes in. If it's like 5 something, then that should give you a general expectation of where this will come in. Too high, and this is going to be a little rough for the market. So this is the biggest thing to note this week. We get some continuing and initial jobless claims. Slow tick down to 69. 280 something the week before. Thursday is Veterans Day, so there's not a big, they skipped. So nothing here in terms of economic news. Markets are still open, so we're going to trade. Friday is another light day. We do get consumer sentiment, which does move markets, but right now this has been going up, so I wouldn't see this really doing a whole lot. I don't see it jumping down. If it does, that would probably move some markets. Not likely right now. Baker Hughes rig count, so 450, slightly higher. I like this little graph, how it shows us here. So they're going up. We'll see if there's a big jump up in rig count, then that would be something to note for sure. I think that's it for the economic calendar. So I just want to take a quick look at the markets. One thing, so we had that speech last week. This candle, these 2 candles right here, really the biggest thing. So this big push up, I think, will likely act as support this week here. We had actually last week we had this as the low end, and the target was something up here, 75%, and we actually hit a full week's range. So it just shows you guys how accurate these things are. So always using kind of like true ranges in general for your targets. And I'm gonna use this big section right here as support for the week. We have a big open for sure. If everything stays the way it's looking right now, this will put our target right around 475. We have just another regular week in the market, and as long as we're above 460, call it 462. Honestly, I don't think we're going to get that low, but that's clear support now after this situation. We're still higher highs, higher lows. So there's no reason that we should expect a different kind of scenario here. I guess we could do, so this looks valid. Maybe we chop down a little bit, but I would still put it 475 for the target there. The Qs, though, on the other hand, I don't know that I would be so bullish just because we have such inflation stuff coming out. But again, we have this dynamic support that has been holding, so that's been pretty reliable for sure. And again, this push right here, that was the speech. So if I do the same kind of thing, call it right around here with the target on the week, I'd say just under 410. Maybe we bounce right off this. I'm going to throw a little alert. If we bounce down, cross up, that will be your kind of buy signal. Not likely. I think this one's going to be more range bound this week. Dow, similar thing. Didn't get the same kind of push right about there. So that puts us just under 370 for the week. On the industrials, still getting higher highs even today, higher lows, still marching along. I think if I were going to take a bullish bet, this is probably the space I would with the quote unquote reopening kind of theme. So big push. This is the prior high of this giant consolidation area that we've had for forever. Let's see. This is actually tradable to me now that we're in a breakout. So we're tracking pretty good here. So let's take this, which puts the target for the week just under 250. Might have a possible trade there for sure. One thing to note, so VIX, always keep in mind if you're trading options. Right now we're below 18, so anything below 18 on the VIX as a whole would be good for debit spreads, long calls, things like that. If we're way up here above 25, you want to be trading credit spreads. But as long as we're below this 18, that's when you get a pretty steady market, kind of trudge higher, and debit spreads and long calls, things like that. Being net long options is perfectly fine, broadly speaking. Really quick, so Bitcoin, we are breaking out. Again, here's our prior high. We're looking for another high. We got a higher low here. We got a little consolidation, and we are breaking out. I would totally expect to see this break 60. This is going to put us over 70 soon, real soon. That actually puts like the 100K number in. 100K number in range for this year. Wow, based on the way this guy moves. Pretty cool. Actually, if I have most of my money in this space, maybe not Bitcoin specifically, but the altcoin action. Yeah, so this is that other chart that we want to look at. Still consolidating. So we haven't really had the full push yet either. So this is still coming. Alt season is still underway. All right, that is pretty much it. we want to take a look at treasuries just with so much in terms of interest rates and inflation this week. Rates lower, treasury bond goes higher. I think that we priced in a lot, and that's where we saw this little bounce. So, I mean, this is setting up just for more range-bound trades, nothing crazy. Crude, if you're trading or hitting this support here, so same thing. I'm looking at this as probably a range-bound trade the foreseeable future until something major changes on both of those. I don't need to take it. Do we need to take a look at the dollar? Kind of moved markets, but nothing major, right? Again, keys are going to be the most sensitive to interest rates, things like that, the strength of the dollar, crude oil. I think IWM most bullish. We got a couple targets, SPY, IWM, maybe industrials, and then SPY. But again, that reopening trade is what I'm looking at. Here, earnings. So biggest earnings day. This is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So tomorrow and Wednesday, we'll have a couple trades for you. And I think we could start jumping into some charts. I know that the guys wanted to look at Tesla, and there was a little gap from the open. Well, I don't think so. Like, I've been part of public companies and, working with owners and things. So I know for sure that as an owner, you can't sell more than 10% of the average daily volumes shares. So at most, if the volume is 35.6 million, he can only sell 3.5 million so far today. And that's going to happen pretty as a block trade at the end of the day. And so it'll likely be, he owns 30%, 10% of that would be 3%. So 300 billion or 30 billion was the number. Yeah. Someone was talking about a gap around 900. I didn't actually see it. I did look. I saw it, but it was super tiny. If we go for gaps like that, then there would be a lot of others that it just wasn't something that was like a dollar-wide gap. So not really anything I would trade off of. What I would trade off of is this gap right here. 1216 was this gap this morning. That is a big one. So when this fills, I would probably say that's when you could kind of short, right? So 1200 is going to be, it was a big number to break through. So 12 puts us right here. So we'll struggle here a little bit and let's see what happens from there. It might not be a trade that ends up playing out today or this week. It might be something for later. Just to keep in mind. So 1200, shoot, you might be able to get away with some like 1200 calls right now while that gap fills. But just the fact this isn't dumping so hard right now is pretty bullish. Just to get to that one little section. A couple, I know AMD is blowing up right now. Let's do a quick sector check actually. So sector check. So retail, semis, software, oil, energy, financials, healthcare, and biotech. So biotech, really not the place to be. I think Pfizer's pretty much running that space right now. Software still super bullish. Semis probably second. So semis, software, wow. Even oil services trying to pick it up a little bit. What else do we got? Yes, energies looks next. What is the transportation? IYT? Yeah, there you go. So oh, look at that. That's a steady climb higher. So this would be reopening. Energy, I think, is going to be inflation and reopening related. Retail, absolutely reopening related. Semis and software look to be the strongest. This guy is just, I don't know if I want to be anywhere close to that. Financials will be probably chopping for a while the rates figure themselves out. AMD, this guy is breaking all-time highs. Almost 150 right now. I don't know if you saw this, Steven. That is a huge trade. This one has significantly more room to run from a market cap perspective than NVIDIA. So here's 178. Taking a look, or semis, right? Strongest sector right now. AMD, probably that pretty big alpha and most potential. 178 billion. Compared to, let's say, an NVIDIA who's closer to $1 trillion, 770, right? So that's why AMD will have more room to run than NVIDIA from percentage basis right now. Both will be good though.
Yeah, we're getting a big pump right now, like this specifically right now in the last like 15 minutes because there's just been some news coming out. They're introducing a new GPU for AI, a new partnership was just announced. Oh, Facebook. Partnership with Facebook.
Oh, that's a good one. So I think, and Ryan's been all over this trade for a while, like flipping his NVIDIA for AMD or just focusing on AMD. That is huge. Affirm had a huge move. Affirm wasn't familiar with PayPal Mafia, but actually I think the CEO of Affirm was part of that crew also. So if you want to look at stocks as far as investing in people, this one has some pretty good pedigrees. Live Nation from you, that was a reopening trade. Huge earnings beat. Bad news did not take the stock down. So this is super bullish to me. I was looking at those November 20 calls, but I'm starting to feel like I want some bigger swings, and I really like Stevens Boeing. This thing, almost the perfect entry this morning, around 2.
Yeah, I just reopened it.
Yeah, so I was actually looking at that. I threw out that January spread, which I mean I really like
Yeah,
personally.
yeah, I do too.
For a longer term swing, you can trade differently for sure, but I just felt like that was the easiest, something that you can kind of set. One thing to note, we had an AMD. It was me and Brian put together like an AMD trade way back in the day in his server, and it was a 125, I think even like 150 December debit spread. And it was down, it drew down pretty heavily over here, right? But look at it now, it's fully valued. So those are the kind of trades that you can actually hang on to for a while. If you know how to create like butterflies and things, they can be really, really good to hold for a while and maybe trade, trade around.
The spread I put together like a month ago on AMD.
Yeah.
I ended up alerting for everyone to close. I mean, it dipped
just slightly
out of the stop loss figure and then ran super hard. I was super frustrated with that.
Yeah, 115 to, I mean, geez, $100, $500 max profit. You would be completely maxed out on this, and this is for October.
Yeah, it was a little too short dated too for what the run ended up being, but
I think my point is like for options, they'll look like they could draw down pretty heavily sometimes on smaller dollar moves. But if you have the right strikes, if you want to do a longer term swing, buy double, maybe triple the amount of time that you think it's going to take. And if you do that, you have to use a spread. So use a spread. Don't just buy a call option. It's actually not going to work. You have to use a spread. If you're not using a spread, that will not work. We got a bunch of cannabis news, and I don't remember what exactly it was. Look at this right now. Holy crap. I just noticed this Friday. So we have, still raise my super high beta. I will just set a quick alert breaks here. We're over our 50-day. Maybe it gets a little rejection. Strong above that 50, then we would have a date with destiny at least at the 200, maybe higher. This bad boy can run something fierce too. We'll see. All right, so I'm gonna put that on my radar. Quick check. Trade desk, big beat, if you believe it. Look at, like the pot stocks, man, they're going. So infrastructure bill, we got that going on. That's gonna push fuel cell. QS at a pullback, and look at this huge move, right? I think I've been talking about this since this break of 23, you'd be up like 50% just on the stock alone right now, and looking like you have some room higher. So put this in the Lucid basket, put it in the, would it be Clean Energy, Charge Point, and then somebody mentioned Blink this morning. Blink, I think we got a 200 in the way here and resistance. This one has run very similar to QS actually. It's a pretty big run. This looks like a pretty good sized break, but we do have earnings in the way, so you just want to be aware of that kind of stuff. You can trade it, but steer clear when it comes to earnings. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this company just because we have charge points locally. They just look like ghost towns. Just shoddy equipment. I'm like, who wants that? Plug, same thing. This is an infrastructure build. All of these hydrogen plays are getting, and they're small caps, so kind of hits. When do these guys have earnings? December 20th. Ooh, well, what is that? 80. It could be an $80 calendar for $100 on the monthlies, but your risk reward isn't going to be as good as a debit spread on something like that. But yeah, this is a nice break, very clear break. And so Snap. So let's take a look at Snap. Snap. Yeah, this guy got beaten down for sure. So I had support at 59 initially. Let's take a look at a longer time frame. So I don't need this anymore. Ended up here. So where does that take us? That takes me this little area. I like that. So does it line up? I'm looking at this little chop zone bouncing around in here. For sure, what you could say is if it's above this and this gap, that should be good. Let me sync this one. And we're just clearing that. So something like this, I would just call this like a reversion trade. So revert if you do anything, mean being the prior trend, and it'll likely get some resistance. So that would put you, this is a channel, would get you some resistance right on here, which would that make a nice little trade. Let's see. So that this gap, 63, we're at 55. So let me take a look at the chain. So that'd be like 55, 60 kind of debit spread. Where's the IV? Is about even across the board. You don't have any earnings in the way for sure. It's not a huge amount of volume on the chain, but yeah, I could see back to this 200-day for sure. And then you'd have to reevaluate, which this 200-day, this red line coincides with this gap and bottom of that channel. That would be my first target. I see some November monthly 60s and January 50s. It's about 17,000 November 55s. Even a $5 move with an option, yeah, you could do it. $55, $60 debit spreads, $1.50. Okay, just okay. A little bit more risky. I'd rather see a big break in. So if this level 55 could hold, I'd be good. Pull it right here. 54.50 potential bounce. Unless there's some news, it'd be a little choppy for sure. We're not getting to the 50-day, but the 200-day, they could fight for it. So here to here, yeah, 55, 60. 60. I'd probably just go with 55. November monthlies. I don't know that I need to do a spread on that. Pretty inexpensive compared to what it usually is. Yeah, 17 percentile. It's pretty. IV's pretty low. So with that, VIX this low, 24,000 for this week on the 55s. Then you'd be a little in the money. That'd probably be your best return. So this week, 55s, $1.27. The monthly 55s. Yeah, I'd start on the monthlies, and if it starts to stall out, then you could sell this week's 55 against it, kind of collect a little yield. That's how I would play that one. It's not strong enough to be like, I'm super excited about it, but I like it. Oh, Amazon. I was looking at Amazon. Did you guys know that this move on Amazon is actually, so you remember that Netflix and everybody else kind of consolidation? So we're right in here. That move on Amazon last week actually put us just outside this box. We do want to keep this on watch, even though it's kind of had a little fall from grace. It's towards the top of this consolidation zone. If Amazon gets a breakout out of this, that's going to be a really big deal. Breakout would have to be close over 35.50, which we're really toying with. If we get it, you can get this push up. See this little bounce here, right here. So this 35.75 is likely going to be, call it 35.75, 35.75, going to be a big deal level, which is most what we hit and failed on last Friday, which now that I'm looking at this makes perfect sense. Cool. So support here would be 34.50, and then maybe look for a bounce. A couple more bucks. This is a super tiny move for Amazon. If we get this, then I'd look for a bounce, and I could might be able to play towards the top of this range. That'd be an epic breakout, though. We'll see. All right, I think that's it for me. Unless you guys have anything else you want to take a look at, I think we're good. Alt season, man. It's where I'm at. This is where you're going to make your money. I love the stocks. We could trade the options all day, but this is where it's at. If you haven't noticed, you're late to the game. Adios, guys. We'll see ya.